Welcome.
Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered if there's hope through hardship? Well, this week we've got an answer for you. Hang tight, buckle up. We're going to wake up the inner giant. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, co-creator of Wake Up with Giants TV, a tribe of giants and 12 Journeys coaching. I wrote a little book. I beat Nick to it. I don't usually say anything to it. It's called The Journey of
Perfect,
Riches.
man.
It's
Yep.
living the paradigm of kindness. And Nick wrote a little book. Actually, it's a giant book, The Giants and the Smalls. Check that bad boy out. You can get that in Amazon or giantsandsmalls.com. And that's how this whole podcast, all of this stuff, came into existence is through Nick's experience with hardship. So this is going to work out perfectly today. And listening to his like inner guidance and inner voice, and this book downloaded, and boom. Then I met Nick in 2019, and then all of us are here today. This is this is perfect. We've got just
Yeah.
sorry, Nick.
It just keeps growing. No,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
It's like a weed. We can't stop it now. It just keeps growing.
It's not like smoking weed though. That's
No,
different.
not that kind of
Yeah.
weed.
Yeah.
Just as fun though. We've got, just so that you guys know, scrolling down at the bottom is my12journeys.com. If you haven't been there, that's where we put all of our content. And to help you in your journey, go to my12journeys.com there. We've got a Facebook group called the Tribe of Giants, community of over 4,500 people that are growing, that are there to support. You can post all kinds of amazing content there. We do, and meet a lot of great human beings that are also in the midst of their journey. So go there, and then on YouTube, hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time. We're on most of those major platforms in some sort of another. And then July 29th, mark your calendars. We are starting another SG group. What SG group is this? 13?
This is 13, yeah.
13.
Number 13.
Oh my gosh. And so we'll be hosting that. You can dive in with us and go through all 12 journeys. Do we do an 8-week course still, Nick?
This one's a shorter one. It's a
Are we doing
4-week. It's going to be intense.
Okay, so it's an
Yep.
intensive.
Yep, it'll be fast and furious, but man, it'll be impactful. So we reduced the price to make it accessible to a lot more people. It's only $555. The reason we chose that number, everybody's like, that's a terrible marketing idea. But I just love the number of change. 555 is the number of change and transformation. So that's why we chose it.
So in 4 weeks, 555, and yep, we will help you see a lot of change in your world and help you grow and empower you as you're going down your journey to being a giant. Also, Nick has probably queued up, because I saw some of the images before we hopped on.
I do. I want to give an update.
He wrote a book called The Tortoise's Hair. We ran a Kickstarter for editing and publishing and all kinds of things of this book, and we're getting close. So take it away, Nick. Tell us where we're at.
I just wanted to give a preview because I've been editing this book and getting it ready for print. We did our Kickstarter back in May of last year, and we thought we would be done in December, but it took a little bit longer to get the imagery done, to get it laid out, edited, to do a beta reading. And so it's coming together. I just wanted to give you guys a preview of this and let you know where we are. My intention is to have this published and printed by next month, so the end of July. And so you can see the illustrations are incredible. The story is powerful. It's a story of self-acceptance and self-love, which is much needed right now. And so it ties into what we do. As our mission is to impact lives. And we're doing that one person at a time. If we can improve one person by 1%, then we feel successful. But you can see it's beautiful. If you haven't ordered a copy, or you want to find out how you can order a copy of this book, reach out to us and let us know, because this will be something that sits on your bookshelf. Hopefully not sits on your bookshelf. That would be a rough thing. That you read frequently. That's kind of the idea. And so we want to make sure you get a copy in your hands. And so it's beautiful. Yeah. So we're doing one more round of beta reading there, and just really trying to get it dialed in, and then we'll release. So it'll be good enough. We're looking for misspellings. That's I don't want any misspellings in there.
Yeah, that's like an author's worst nightmare, right? Is to buy thousands of books and then it's all. My dad did that. That was the funniest thing. He handed us his book, and on the cover, it's like on the cover, they had spent so much time going through the inside. On the cover, there was like a double letter or something like that. We all died laughing, and then I was like, trying to make him feel better, and I was like, I got a limited edition. Like
it was like our first rounds where the pages would fall out, right? It's like, so terrible.
That brought me back. Mostly gave me some trauma. So hopefully we can work through that today. Yeah, there was a lot of that going on when we first started, but we produced an amazing book, and this one will be just as amazing. So well, let's get started in our show. Do we have anything else?
Good. No, that's it for now. So let's introduce our guest.
Here we go.
Yeah, today we have the honor of speaking with Celeste Edmunds. She's the executive director of the Christmas Box International. Celeste's childhood was marked by severe abuse and instability, experiences that would have defeated many. And if you guys get a chance to read her book, you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. This is an incredible story. Instead, she's channeled her past into a relentless drive to protect and nurture vulnerable children. She was instrumental in creating the Christmas Box shelters, which have provided safety and hope to over 155,000 children. So her impressive career spans both nonprofit and corporate sectors, blending hands-on experience in child welfare with expertise in marketing and team management. Celeste's leadership and vision continue to shape a brighter future for countless youth. Please join me in welcoming Celeste Edmunds to our show. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I need to record and have you introduce me every time.
Yeah, let's do it. Just call me up.
Oh,
hey, Nick,
great.
will you just do that?
I'm going live in 5 minutes. Right, Nick, I need you.
You can charge whatever you need.
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up the show. That was good. Thanks, Celeste.
4 minutes before, 29 seconds before the show.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, I
29 seconds before we start.
My girlfriend Andrea got a chance to see you speak, and she grabbed a copy of the book, and you signed it, and it was just really beautiful. See, it even says Nick on it. That's kind of nice. But we haven't met in person yet.
She was, I know, but she's, of course, you already know, beautiful inside and out. And she was going on and on about how awesome you are. And I should be on the show and all the cool things you do, which is great. It's great to have a big fan in your court, right?
It is.
And she said, she had me sign one to her because I gave one free to all attendees. And then she circled back about 40 minutes later, stood in line again.
Oh my gosh.
And said, what are the chances I could get one for my boyfriend? I said, sure. Sure, the way you talk to me, I feel like I already know him.
Yeah.
So, Nick, it is.
Holy cow. The story, though, I mean, people really don't have a sense of what you've been through and what got you to where you are today unless they go through it. And today we'll do our best to kind of recap some of that. But we like to really look at your philosophies, your journey. The journey is part of that, but it's really what got you through to where you are today, what philosophies developed. But if you could, for the audience, kind of give an overview of what life was like. I know that's hard because you put all of that in here, and they really should grab this book and read it. Yeah, you went into all the details and you didn't hold back. And I just sat there and I thought, you know what? You didn't. And I thought, man, you know what? I will never complain about my life again. My life was actually really good. And can you give a sense of what your life was like as a child
Well, first
and
we're
during
going to start with
development?
that comment you just made, because
Yeah.
everybody always does that. They
Holy
go to
cow.
say something about their life, and then they pull back and they say, but it was nothing compared to yours. So one thing I have learned in trauma therapy, because I highly recommend it if you're going to write your memoir in
Yeah.
any respect, is that the brain doesn't differentiate like your trauma versus mine, right? It like a dream, and you wake up not knowing if it's real or not, because psychosomatically and brain function wise, all of our experiences, all of our trauma belong to us. So anything trauma that you've had is as hurtful and as meaningful to you as mine is to me. So part of my motto is, you matter, because I think we get into these roles like you guys, where you're pushing and you're helping people, and you're really trying to identify like what are those hidden secrets we all live by, or anything that's going to make us all feel better. And then we forget a very key fundamental point, which is ourselves. And at some point, because the bigger your platform gets and the more you're working, you forget all those philosophies for yourself, all those day-to-day you matters that also belong to you. And we start discounting ours because we meet all these people that have all these experiences, and you're like, man, my stuff was hard, but your stuff was really hard. And that's kind of one of my key philosophies, to your point, your question earlier.
I appreciate that. I think
Don't
too,
discount yourself,
I read as well that neglect and trauma register the same in the body, that the body can't tell the difference between the two. And so that I appreciate that, because it's true. That's one of the first things I do is I think, man, I hear your story and I think I went through nothing like that. Yet I still feel the traumas. I still feel those impacts. And so thank you for clarifying that. And can you tell a little bit about kind of, and this is hard. I maybe it's not hard. Maybe you've got it dialed in where you.
No, actually it is, because to your,
Okay.
to your point, I think the mind constantly, when it's revisiting something, because I'll have people say, I'll hear people making comments about putting things behind you and moving on. And I think those are interesting thoughts, but really what I think people do is they push things away, and then the body has a way to bring it up. And there's a lot of books written about that. And for me, it isn't about being dreary about it and soaking in it, but it is very much about a constant reminder. And the book was very helpful in that respect, to remember what you have lived through, because one, you're not even done. And there's a reason it's called a journey. And we're always pushing forward. We're always persevering. We're always using resiliency skills, which is a big part of my work in talking to people about what their strong resiliency skills are and how to build those up, like optimism, how to constantly build those as a muscle, which I believe is an option always. And just kind of how to keep moving forward and recognizing that it is part of your journey. And you do get to be proud of yourself on a day-to-day basis for any success you have, anything you've lived through. Pushing others to do great pushes you to be greater. And I think all those philosophies, really, really matter to keep us moving. But for me, it is always difficult to talk about, because it is a reminder that it happened. And I don't think about it every day. So when I do think about it, I'm like, whew, you know what? That was tough. And when I close my laptop, and as you know, as an author, you think you're maybe done for half a second, and you give something like a memoir to my co-author is Richard Paul Evans, who has written 46 times New York Times bestsellers. So it's nice to have that guy in your court, but it's also a little intimidating when you hand him.
We know that guy.
Yeah, you know that guy. When you hand him your journal for your memoir, and you're like, here you go, you're welcome. I hope you like it. And as an author,
best thing ever written, right?
Yeah,
he's like,
best thing I've ever written.
He's like, garbage. You're like, damn it.
Well,
dude.
he took like 2 weeks to respond. And I'm thinking, okay, I've known him 30 years. And he just doesn't want to hurt my feelings. So I'm like, man, did you like it? Did you not like it? What are we doing here? And he said, well, we have some things we can work with. And I'm like,
that's a
like
Rick
telling
move.
a woman when she's like, how do I look in this? And you say, fine. No, fine is never an option. Yeah. First of all, that's not what we ever say.
Don't ever say fine. Fellas, don't ever say fine when she asks you that.
Be supermodel. Like, yeah.
You never say, hey, when they say, hey, does this outfit make me look fat? You never say, well, it's not the outfit.
It's not your best. Yeah, there's just kind of some things we don't say. And that was one of them. And I was like, so what do you mean? And he said, there's so much there, but I really need more. And I was like, oh man, I don't have any more. Like that is it for me. It took, 18 months. I've got my trauma therapist on speed dial. Like I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do. And he said, all right, let's get a writing coach. So we went through that process for about 5 months where I had a gal that would read a section and then she'd email me a bunch of questions and it would trigger new things. Wow. And so we went through that and it pulled out some more. And then we kind of had the ultimate, okay, now he's going to do the Richard Paul Evans poetic version of the book. And he starts going through it and he says, I'm going to need you to come over to my office and I'm going to ask you some personal questions. Great. Well, it turns out it was this very sometimes holding my hand, sometimes me crying on his shoulder. He really dug into the sexual abuse stuff. He really asked some very deep questions about even what the person was wearing. If I remembered smelling the carpet my face was in. I mean, he went through some serious questions.
Holy cow, yeah.
You're really wanting to dig in. And he said, I want the most, if we're doing this, we're doing it. I want the most authentic version of you. And then I remembered, so the chapter about saying goodbye to my dad was initially the most difficult to write. And then in that moment when him and I were talking, I said, there's a very authentic part of me that I'm not sharing. And I don't think I can put the book out there without sharing it. And it's the bullying chapter. And it's still the most difficult thing for me to talk about because I think people would read it and think, oh, I understand how she got to that place. I understand how somebody gets so frustrated or abused or abandoned or whatever in their life that they cultivate into this human they don't want to be. Many people would condone it. But for me, really admitting that I became the bully because of my experience and how bad I wanted somebody to just say I was awesome or beautiful or smart or anything I had never heard my whole life would make me cling on to the most abusive or toxic of type of people and bring out what I'm not the most proud of. And that chapter is really about that and how we can grow into that person. Because for me, my story, I would say, started off like most stories. I had a mother, a father, they had dreams and hopes. They wanted to have a great life. And then when I was about 3, my brother and sister my sister was born, and then eventually my brother. And really my mom's own rape at the age of 15 and my father's abuse of alcohol and drugs and being addicted when he was a baby because he was diagnosed with polio pre-vaccination time. They really took on some stresses they weren't ready to manage. And I always say by the great big age of 5, my dad was barely around. I became a mother, my sister Tawny. I could cook and do laundry by the age of 7. I was walking my sister to school, singing her favorite song at night. And my role became a mom. And the upside to that is it gave me purpose. I will say that, I was trucking through life with no purpose at a very young age because I didn't know how to be a kid. And so when my dad was put in jail, my biological father and the state intervened. Of course, the idea when the state intervenes is always that life gets better for children. And that's what we hope. That's what we want in the child welfare system. That's what we go for. There's about 600,000 children that are reported as having had child abuse or neglect. That's about 6 in every 1,000 children that are born, they say, will experience that. And right now, we have 500,000 children. We have 500,000 children in foster care at any given time and nationwide all the time. And for me, the book has really driven this message that, there is an assumption that once kids reach the child welfare system, that my tax dollars are contributing towards that. They've been removed from a traumatic experience. Things must be better. And sometimes they are, but I would say oftentimes they're not. They really are dumped into this system that we hope works out for them, whether they return home under a safety plan with the state, which is awesome, or they go into foster care, they live with another family member. We have no guarantees. We have no guarantees that that removal makes a significant difference in their life in the positive. And I just don't want these kids to be forgotten. I don't want them to be part of a statistic all the time that's 500,000 children in foster care. I want us to remember that they all have a story. They all have extreme trauma that, by the way, they're bringing into society, whether you like it or not. They're costing us money as a society. And where are we going to help them? When is the most influential time we can help them so that they can become the best versions of themselves? They can become the best versions for the people they love. They can contribute well. They can become executive directors. They can become CEOs. They can become awesome podcast guys who write their own books. I mean, there are so many things for people to do. And yet the problem is they're constantly reminded, unfortunately, of their lack of self-worth. So the term garbage bag girl, when I get asked, why the name of the book, started out because my stuff was put in a garbage sack every 6 months when I moved, just out of convenience. And over time, what I've realized is that it's more about the mentality of how we view ourselves. If we have trauma and it's not dealt with, especially when you're kids, because you're just moving through it, and we have more trauma, we keep moving through it, but we don't manage it. We don't learn from it. We don't learn who we are from it. We really do start to view ourselves as nothing more than the garbage we're putting in that sack every day. And that's not okay. That's the part that's not okay. It's not so much the trauma itself. It's the way we keep viewing ourselves with the trauma.
I want to hang here for a minute because there's gold. There's some gold right here. To really dive into your story, I'm going to recommend people grab the book and read it because we're going to dive into the philosophies because you're already hitting it. It's the mindset. When we start with our journeys, we start with the non-conscious journey because that's where our programming is. That's who we think we are. That's what we've been taught to be by our experiences, by society, by culture. And if you think you're garbage, that's what shows up in the world for you because that's who you think you are and that's what you think you're worth. And it's really hard to overcome that because we're not equipped with managing that type of information or experience. It's so intense that we don't have the tools to navigate that. And here you are later in life navigating that still probably for the rest of your life because of how intense it is. And it's vital because we wake up to those stories and we think we're those stories. And instead of having compassion for ourselves for those stories and those experiences, we judge ourselves and we justify ourselves. Going into the idea of the bullying, you justify yourself for being a bully, or you could be justified because of your past. And people would look at it and say, oh, it's totally justifiable. Yeah. But that justification and judgment keeps us stuck. And then also the emotions are so intense that we don't know how to regulate those. So we can't release ourselves from those emotional experiences. So therefore they just keep running our lives. Right?
That's right.
So can you speak to that a little bit more of how does somebody start to release from their past, no matter what's happened, whether it's something like your experience or something like mine, how do they start to release that?
Well, it seems a little cliche. There's a word that's thrown around a lot called forgiveness. And I think for me, it's absolutely necessary. And that's also about forgiving yourself. So when I talk about the bully chapter, a lot of that has been for me to forgive myself for the girl that I hurt and for the father I also hurt, whom I lied to, the adopted father who I accused of hurting me when he did not, because I wanted the attention of my mother at the time. The only attention, positive, oddly, that I'd ever gotten for her, when I said he hurt me when he didn't, and she was happy about it. And I thrived from her being happy to want to be with me. And so needing to forgive myself, not as an excuse because all this happened and I became that person, but genuinely, I forgive myself for that little girl doing the best she could at that time and how I want to live moving forward. And it starts to change your heart. And I think when you can start to change your heart, the way you view people who have wronged you, the way you can identify, even in my book, there's a lot of Jennifers in the book, but there's about 6 people. And I have a list of those that I've been circling back with when I can find them, and thanking them for, if even a minute or 6 months, they helped me in my path to be able to recognize and give gratitude, which is the next part of it. If I can forgive and then give gratitude to somebody, it doesn't have to be the same person, but right, just that process of who am I forgiving, who am I giving gratitude for being there for me in my life. If you've read the book, you know that I was adopted for a second time as an adult. That the version of the story there, because remember, there's 25 more years, that'll be another book after this book. But this book is really focused on, yes, this woman, this stranger who didn't know me, didn't need to know me, was a single mom with 2 teenage daughters, did not need to take a third one in the home, and decides, you know what, there's something in this girl. She uses the motto that we always talk about in our home, which is home is where they have to keep you. That means no matter what. And that change of heart that she gave me, and then later adopting me when I was an adult, I was 26 years old when she legally adopted me, started changing some core beliefs in myself about my own value. Writing my own story, I always tell people, especially if you've been in anything traumatic, you don't have to publish your story, whole different story. But I think if everybody wrote their story, if you wrote your version of your own story, some uniquely cool things happen. One, you realize that there were people along your path that stepped up to help you. They will identify themselves in that process. And 2, you walk away from even that little draft version as, you know what? I kicked some ass. I did okay. I have a friend that teaches a model called the adult chair. That's pretty phenomenal about, as an adult, how you would talk to your younger self at whatever age, right? And the positivity that you would now tell that
beautiful,
at that age. And when you do that, all of a sudden you take a deep breath and you own your own voice. And if you really haven't owned your own voice truly to the extent of loving yourself, understanding who you are, and owning that voice in you that has had stuff to say, writing books is just a great way to do that. It's about being able to say things that you want someone else to hear in a positive way, or you want someone else to feel that you're empathizing with. All those things started to really create some very core beliefs for me. I'd like to say I narrowed them down to 2, but I probably have 7 I always work through that are just kind of like I like to leave everything better than I find it. I like to always look for the optimism in a situation. I never confuse naive with hope.
Can you clarify that?
Yeah. So hope for me means there's hope, whether you're spiritual or not. There's hope that there's always something better, but it doesn't naively mean I don't have a plan for what better looks like. It's not throwing caution to the wind and saying, throwing it into the universe. So I hope everything works out okay. It's hope with a plan. It's about constantly having this plan that accompanies that hope. So I would say, don't confuse my hope with me being naive, because that is not it. I'm not just flighty thinking there's rainbows, and I do, and unicorns every day without the hard stuff. But I do.
That's the world that I live in too, by the way.
It's
lots of rainbows,
it's
sunshine.
Just better. Let's just admit it. But I know when I walk around most doors, there is the possibility of something hard. Hope with a plan, Lori says. That's right.
Yeah.
There is a possibility that something hard is going to happen. We already know that. We already know life is going to deal you something. And most times, the only thing we can all guarantee besides taxes and death, which no one wants to talk about, the only thing we can guarantee we're all going to have that's exactly the same is change.
Yeah.
Whether we have that great plan or not, there's going to be a change that's going to happen. And so for me, hope is critical with the plan.
Okay, I
Knowing
want to.
why is critical.
I'm gonna hone it in here a little bit, and then we're gonna come back to that, because there's still, inside of that healing journey, if life was like the infinity symbol, if you can imagine that you have one side, the past, and you have your future, and then you have the present right in the middle. And in your past, the navigating that past isn't about staying in the past and living there and using that to stay where you're at and not live into the future. It's just recognizing where you've come from to get to where you are. One of my favorite definitions that we use for forgiveness is to not cause additional harm over what happened in the past. And so the moment you can just let that go and not cause that additional harm and move into learning how to navigate your emotions and acknowledge your life as it has been, as it is, and express that gratitude, then it moves you into that loop to the present moment, right? And from the present, now you can start to envision in the future. So you go to the other side of the loop there, and you start envisioning the future, and having a clear vision of the future creates hope. Hope theory says that when you have a clear vision, you'll go after it. You can create it, and you can overcome any obstacle to get there. But then there's this part of some people, as a trauma response, will continually be putting things into the future, but not allowing those to germinate and come back. So that loop that comes back to the present moment is allowing your creations to be received and brought back into your present moment. So we're constantly doing this loop of pulling ourselves from the future into the present, from the past into the present, right?
Yes.
Does that bring up some ideas for you?
Yeah. So I was going to talk about knowing your why, and that's a big part of that, because if those loops come together for me, or when they do rather, that why, which helps you live with your purpose and live intentionally, that why is gonna drive those circles back.
Yeah, the whole thing, right?
That's right. If you don't have the why do I exist? What is my purpose? How do I live with intention every day? Those circles won't manifest into something that is universally great, that is going to open up the best doors for you. Because like you said earlier, there's, it's the whole negativity begets negativity, right? Positivity is in positivity. There is so much to that. That is not BS. That is not just, the mind knows that. The mind knows it. So for me, it's the knowing your why. It's the living with that purpose, living with intention. So when I fall, which I do every day, literally, physically, metaphorically, I wasn't born with grace, by the way. So all that's happening to me every single day. And I'm like, okay, but I know my why, and I know my triggers.
Yeah.
And I can laugh about the things I never would have laughed about before. Like, that's so funny that I do that thing all the time. Like, of course I do. It's just part of what makes me me. It's a little annoying, but you know what? It's fine. I still have the hope. I still have the purpose. So it's not, again, it's that naive thing. It's not about the fall and then thinking, oh, there's hope for a brighter day. It's much more defined than that. It's much more, of that innate feeling that you have, that that my why and my purpose is so big that all the things that come at me, I don't have the answer today. Sometimes I just don't know it, but I do know with confidence it will come. I do know it will. And I think that's big, because for a lot of years, I didn't have that. I've always been fairly optimistic, but I really didn't have those key fundamental learnings from my childhood. And I don't think I would have if I wouldn't have written my book. I don't know that I would have been able to come to the place that I'm at today, where I know that it's okay to say no one will advocate for me more than myself. I know that.
We had a guy on last week, Sachin, on our show, and he said, when you change how to who, life really changes. So can you pull up Hugh's comment there?
I love that.
The comment here is, my whys have turned into the hows. And now if you can turn your hows into the who can I serve, that's where life, I think, gets really impactful.
Yes.
And your purpose, you mentioned, if you don't have a big enough purpose, well, here's the thing. If you look at Viktor Frankl and Yes to Life and Man's Search for Meaning, and even your own experience here, what you just shared, is that when you were a child, your purpose was to take care of your sister, and that became purpose enough to keep going.
That's
right. And then you found other things that kept you going. And in survival state, a purpose will keep you alive and keep you here.
That's right.
A purpose will keep you stepping even on the hardest of days. And I love that you just shared that you have these moments, these frustrations, these setbacks, these mental thoughts that come up every day. I do too. Like, they don't go away for me. I just know, like you said, you joke about it, but I just step back in. Yeah, it's hard. I would love them not to be there.
Yeah, I find a lot of humor in things. It does help me. It does help me make light of some things, not manage it.
Yeah.
I never say deal with it, because I don't think that's fair. I think we manage through our stuff. I don't think we deal with it. I don't think we're supposed to push it away. I don't think we're supposed to put it behind us. I think we continually recognize that there are just things that are there. We all have our stuff, and we're constantly managing through it as we're on this journey.
So useful. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the loving yourself the very most is probably the most difficult thing I had to learn. I think before writing my book, I would have said, sure, I love myself as much as someone else loves themselves. But if you've ever done an awkward exercise of standing in front of your mirror, literally, and telling yourself you love yourself, you like who you are, you're proud of who you are, which sounds and does feel a bit awkward.
Yeah.
But is the most interesting experience, because I always tell my children, talk to yourself the way you would talk to somebody else. I mean, you would never have said that to me. You would never called me stupid, at least not to my face. You would have never
say the worst things internally, sometimes out loud, to ourselves, that we would
You're driving down your road, you're like,
never
that was
say
the
to anyone
stupidest
else.
thing I've ever done. No, actually, it probably wasn't. But it also isn't fair to constantly say those things to yourself that are just only going to keep you in that space of not progressing. And
it's also not toxic positivity, where you're just saying all the positive and denying the negative. You're really acknowledging the negative, right?
That's right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's like when people say, oh, like when you hear in mental health industry, the PTSD, that term gets made fun of quite a bit. Oh, I have PTSD. I heard somebody say it in the grocery store a couple weeks ago. I don't know who they were speaking to, but I turned around and said, not to be rude, but PTSD is actually really a big thing. It isn't just for veterans anymore. That's just how it was identified. PTSD is a trigger, and a trigger is not always negative. A trigger is, and the more you recognize them, the better you are. And the better you recognize how you manage around them, you can say that's a trigger, or, oh, you know what, I'm having a moment of PTSD from that experience that brought that to me. Those are very healthy conversations to be having with yourself, that are true, that are constantly helping you grow, that are making you. And why? Because the more you're the best version of yourself, the more bring out the best version of everyone around you. And then they are bringing it out around them. And we're really creating a better world. You know what I mean? Like, it really is that simple, but not that simple. But it really is. It really is what you're giving to yourself is what you're pushing to other people. And now what they're likely also pushing to someone else. And it's a big responsibility pool of taking a village, right? To raise children, but also to raise each other. How are we bringing each other up every day?
If you're in a space of non-forgiveness of yourself or others, there's no way that ripple can happen, right? There's no way that you can impact others because you hate yourself. You can't forgive yourself. You're causing yourself additional harm. And so that's what comes out of you. And so what they experience is the negative ripple, which is still, I guess, a ripple. It's just not the kind we want to create. but that positive ripple has to start with you, the stone that's being dropped in the pond, right?
Yes.
Is if that stone hates itself, that's what's going to go out from it,
That's
right?
right. That's right. And some
So I
days we're
agree.
stronger at it, some days we're better at it, but I think that's okay. I think if there's, for me, if there's a constant awareness of all the things you're learning, you know, you have this list, so you don't do it well one day and you recognize it and you think, yeah, my compassionate radar today was a little off. I was a little pissy. It happens. I mean, we're
Yeah.
just not
Yeah.
all walking out the door doing all the things awesome every day. That's okay to say, tomorrow I'm going to step up my compassion just a little bit. I'm just going to raise, like you said, 1%. I love
Yeah.
that, by the way. If you can be 1% better today than you were yesterday, and you just tell yourself 1% a day, that's 360% in a whole year.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's champion that. 1% is awesome, and everyone can do 1%
And,
better.
and
I don't care
impact
who you
one
are.
person, right? One person, 1%, that'll change the world. And,
It
you
will.
know,
And
we
you talked
witnessed,
about negativity. Oh,
yeah.
good.
Well, go first and I'll hold on to mine.
I was just gonna. Thinking about that statement you made about
Yeah.
negativity, and the negativity we put in the world. I was thinking, it's also okay to say, I don't need to have negative people around me. And sometimes biological connections are the most difficult. In the second book to Garbage Bag Girl, I will talk much more about this. But for me, I could not give up this idea of these all these beautiful people I had in my life. I still couldn't let go of who didn't want me in my life. And it was just the garbage bag girl mentality. I circled back with every mother, every person in my life, every human that wronged me, and still tried to figure out how to have them accept me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
talking about codependency, that's so true. Like, I was like, and my therapist would, made a loose joke, so I would hear it because that's how I am. But she said, there can be 40 people in a room and 39 of them you're just hitting it off with. But there's one kind of in the corner pulling back, and you will focus on that one person as soon as you can turn them around. And it was true. That's totally who I was. And I would focus on whoever was negative in the room to see if I could turn them into an ally and build them up. And it's the reason that's so hard is because that's me constantly looking for toxic relationships, constantly looking for the people I can bring up like it's my job to do that. It's my job to keep parenting partners. It's my job to be all those things. And it's not. It is my job to be the best version of myself and love myself the most, and then bring that to you.
It's the reverse. I don't know if you've seen the GIF with Shaquille O'Neal, where he's like batting away the negative emotions and stuff, and like they're coming at him and he's batting them away. But in this case, when you get into that space of people pleasing or wanting to heal that one person in the room, it's almost like you're bringing those things into your space. You're like, yeah, bring that in, bring that in, bring that in, and you don't know it because we're so unconscious to it that we do it automatically. And until somebody points it out, then, we're just doing what we've always done.
That's right.
But that awareness, when you do get that awareness, then the ideal is to not judge yourself over that awareness. It's okay that you had that. It's okay you did it. Now let's just engage in a better behavior, right?
That's right. It's the constant. It's the learning. Just keep
it's
learning.
Constant.
That's right. And it's okay. I mean, I always go back to the forgiving yourself. It's okay you weren't on that day, or it's okay you're still learning something you haven't quite. I mean, we're just human beings. We're just designed to err in so many ways. And and it's okay. That is okay to acknowledge I'm not awesome at everything. I always say I just can't be great at all of it. You really just can't. But you can acknowledge all the things you need to learn every day. The one thing that's going to make you 1% better, and get after that. And I think that's okay.
I've got a question for you around, the idea of accepting yourself and learning to live with yourself and move forward. Now you go into a relationship and you got two humans, right, coming together. different backgrounds, different personalities that come together. These traumas come together, and those traumas start communicating with each other. And what would you share around that? I mean, have you had relationships where you've had to navigate now, not just yours, but theirs? Oh yeah. Okay. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, like I said, there's 25 more years after the after
we need like a 2-hour, 3-hour show here. I just want to pick your brain. Yeah.
I do think the managing, for me, there was, again, it was the garbage bag girl concept. I'm going to manage the toxic relationships because that's what my life is. And I always go back to my trauma therapist because she's the best. But she said to me one time, and I was so highly offended, of course, because I just didn't want to see it. She said, you will choose conflict because you know it so well. You're the most comfortable in that space. And so you will choose it also in the relationships that you choose.
And this isn't just,
I won't. No, I don't.
But this applies to every relationship. This isn't just.
That's right.
This isn't just your intimate relationships. This is every relationship. Right. Is that right?
It was. Yeah. Okay. And so choosing an intimate relationship is obviously important because you want to stop choosing toxic relationships or you're stumped all the time. But what I found happens is as soon as you're making these changes of growth, as soon as your frequency level is elevating, and there's a lot of information out there about that, and I believe wholeheartedly in it. As soon as you're elevating to the best version of you, a couple of things will happen. One, certain people will have a hard time being around you. Just naturally, it's a different version of you, and they're uncomfortable because they're not going to progress and move in that. That is not your responsibility to change them. That belongs to them. And if they're uncomfortable around you, that's part of your growth, is being okay with that. If you can't be in my light, I have to be okay not letting you be in my light.
They either have to elevate or move away, right?
Yeah. And you don't even have to say, sometimes you don't have to say a whole lot, that those people can gravitate off. They just don't fit in your circle of love really anymore. But the other thing is you start to only look and be around those people that elevate you. Your point of vision starts to greatly change. And your circle of love, I call it, starts to change as well, because you're elevating with people that are elevating. So you're naturally it's like successful people, and whatever success looks like for you, I'm not identifying that, but successful people will want to be around more successful people.
Yeah.
People that are elevating want to be, it's like mastermind groups. They're such a popular thing now because people want that. They want that inspiration. The beautiful group of giants that you've created, it's getting bigger because people want to be part of that. The people that don't fit into that anymore are not going to fit into that anymore. So some of that, I think, through evolution just naturally starts to shift for you.
I like that.
When you start to elevate yourself, and you don't need to spend a whole lot of work in it. I think where you do have to spend the work is in the intimate relationships. Are tough because you're choosing partners. You're choosing those people that are, but the same rule has to apply. Now you know, and once you know your path of growth, you will literally turn around at any moment and see someone that no longer fits. And you get to say, wish you so much success, love you so hard, but our paths of growth just don't fit on the same path, and that's okay. I want your path to be good. I want it to grow for you. But in order for mine to grow, you're not fitting in it. And I get to say that, and I get to own it, and I get to protect that at all costs, because many people have other roles, right? They have careers. I think of myself, I'm still a mom. I'm also a grandmother. I'm a partner. I run a children's charity. Like, there's a lot on my plate. I'm podcasting now. I'm doing all the things. And in order to do that, my elevation has to stay high. And if those people aren't fitting into that, that doesn't belong to me anymore. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That just gives freedom to it because it's an alignment thing. It's this is where I'm at. This is what aligns for me. This is where you're at. This is what aligns for you. They might be different. We can see if they work together. If they don't, it's okay. We can move on in our own ways.
No one needs to feel bad about it. Just
it doesn't have to be right and wrong, right?
That's right.
And it doesn't mean it's not painful if that happens. It just means it's not wrong. And so that's where the self-forgiveness comes in. Yeah, I see inside of this so many elements of what we've talked about. We've had 280 plus interviews that we've done so far. And every person has, similar experiences. They're all unique in their way, but there are these common themes that show up for everybody that's navigated through what we talked about. And we call those the 12 journeys. But they're so common. It seems to be human behavior, this framework. Like we tend to get non-conscious because we're programmed to go non-conscious. And what's been programmed is really important because if you allow that to run, that's going to create your life. Yeah. And it has to be unconscious because it consumes so much energy. It has to be automated. And man, if you never got a shot to really just sit with it and heal it, then you go on thinking that you're broken, and you're really not broken. It's just time to update that programming, right? And show you how valuable you are.
I agree. And I sometimes think the broken are the most evolved. And what I mean by that is it hasn't been proven out, but I have a personal theory in having been raised in foster care and meeting so many that have that. The moment you are removed from your home and you are placed into someone else's home in child welfare, your soul ages about 10 years. And the reason is because you've seen and heard and felt things that most children haven't, that you maybe know. The problem with your soul aging, if you will, is that developmentally, oftentimes spiritually, sometimes physically, all of those growths haven't mirrored up to where you're at, which creates a lot of confusion in the middle. So if I've lived a life like I was at age 7 and I'm taken from my home and they're putting me into these worlds of drug rehabilitation centers and I'm selling myself to make sure my mom doesn't have to pay for her own medication. And I'm making these big decisions that I think, by the way, at age 7 are brilliant and right. And I'm a mom anyway, and it's good. I'm watching these horrific shows at the age of 8, like The Exorcist, and all my world is being put into like this constant 36-year-old life, let's call it. Like maybe somebody at that age has hit it. But I'm still an 8-year-old girl that developmentally, that my brain development, my spiritual growth, everything about me is not 36. The gap I'm trying to fill on top of never knowing how I would deal with trauma, because at that age, you're just moving through it the best you can. At some point, probably when I am 36, that's going to come to a screeching halt. And I'm going to be like, what the hell just happened? For me, I had dreams that were being recalled for the first time in my 30s. I had physical ailments that were coming up in immune disorders. I was sick a lot. Things were manifesting. And I'm like, my doctor would make a joke and say, you're the healthiest sick person I know. You don't smoke, he's naming off all your blood pressure's great, but yet you never really feel good. And you're in here for pneumonia and bronchitis, and it just doesn't really add up for you, Celeste. You exercise. I was like, gosh, what's going on? And when the healing really began is when I started learning through my therapist and some other techniques that, I read a book called, when I was writing my memoir, called What Happened to You? It's co-authored by Oprah Winfrey and a doctor. And we use it now a lot in, we're training staff at our shelters, but it's a model and for training, but it also was very philosophical about when you meet somebody, don't ask them what is wrong with you. Ask them what has happened to you.
Mm.
The shift in the way we speak about that and ask those questions to somebody transforms them and how they're even going to respond to you.
Wow.
Right? What's wrong with you makes me feel defensive. I'm like, well, what do you mean what's wrong with me? And or else I'm getting mad at you. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? I mean, you know what I mean? Like I call her Brooklyn. She comes out every now and then and she's feisty and she's like putting up a battle. But if you ask me, what happened to you? Tell me what happened. My fight or flight releases. I take a deep breath. I'm like, something did happen to me. And once we start asking that question and we let people in on their story into your life on what happened to them, this beautiful thing happens. They start having compassion towards themselves. You start having empathy towards them. And pretty soon there is really this story that's being told. You might say, come on to my podcast and share that. But the point is, you're like opening up this world of love and all the things we've talked about, the love, the forgiveness, the acceptance, the owning your voice, the purpose. All that can't even start to happen if you don't ask the right question to somebody, which is what happened? What happened to you? Tell me your story. Don't ask somebody what's wrong with them. No one wants that question ever asked of them. But in childhood trauma therapy, that is how we always taught it. And even in adult therapy, for years, it was all about, so what happened to you? So what's wrong with you? It was just such an attack method. And now that method is being changed and switched on asking children, tell us what happened to you. And it's a much different childhood trauma model that's being taught in shelters.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. That I can see the healing in that because it allows a safe space to talk about what happened, and it's needed. We had Brooke Braylove on. She's a accelerated resolution therapist, and she talks about the releasing of trauma from the emotions, and the imagery. You look at Peter Levine's work and Bessel van der Kolk and many of these others that talk about trauma being stored in the body. And Edith Eger, who talks about expression as the opposite of depression. And all of these things are about expression, really. It's about release. It's about getting that from in here, out here. And even what you're talking about, the somatic experiences where the body is showing up in sickness because it's not releasing, it's so vital. It affects our health. It affects our relationships. It affects our reality. And so creating spaces like what you're talking about where people can express that, I think it's essential. And even if you can help one person, it's the starfish thing, the cliche starfish. It helps
matters to this one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I think matters the most. And it's not about the grand visions. It's about helping that next person, that one person.
I agree. One person at a time, but first yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But starting with you. I like that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask, is there something, an impression, a question, anything that comes up for you that you feel needs to be talked about or that you maybe want to say to the people that are watching? Because people are watching you live right now. What would you say to them to really impact their lives?
Well, I always bring it back to the kids. So, I'm the executive director of Christmas Box International, and we have provided shelter or assessment services or essential items for more than 155,000 children in the last 28 years. And it's kind of a lot to get your head around. So I always tell people that's enough to fill Madison Square Garden 7.5 times.
Holy cow.
Just for scope. But I always bring it back to them because I remind our community who helps bridge those gaps for these kids by supplying these essential items that they need, that it's really the simplest things. Like the kids that come into our shelter are not asking for big things, by the way. I'll say the first year we opened, I asked Kimberly, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I was thinking, here the list is going to come, right? She's 8 years old. And she said, I'd like a shirt with a tag on it.
Mm.
And what she was saying was, I want something new for the very first time.
Mm.
Kids that come into our shelter are asking for, can I have a camera for Christmas? Because I think this is the last time I'll visit with my family and I want to take a whole bunch of pictures.
Mm.
The reason I bring those kind of stories up is because it's the smallest acts of kindness like that. The smallest acts of kindness to me that make the greatest impact in people's lives every day. I have these red bracelets I wear that say "You Matter" with my website. And I was in a grocery line once, and a woman just kept giving me the eyeball, like maybe she knew me. And so I check out. She's bagging, and I said, "Have we met before?" And she said, "I don't think so, but I feel like I know you." And I said, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I would like you to have this bracelet. And I put it on her, and I said, I don't know what this means for you right now, but I have a feeling you need to hear it. And I said, I hope you have a really good day. And I walk away, and she comes running up to me and she says, may I give you a hug? And I said, yeah. And she said, I just really needed that today. And we're all gifted with this really great gift of that instinct that tells us when we need to stop and say thank you, or something nice, or anything small, right? And how many times, if we're busy, we kind of avoid it, like I'll catch the next one because I don't have time. But I think if we stop and we turn around and we follow that instinct to tell somebody whatever we were supposed to tell them, hey, this may come across weird, I don't really know you, but I think you're beautiful, I think you have pretty eyes, I think you matter. I just hope you really have a good day today. There's a feeling and a message, and as you elevate, I believe those come to you more strongly.
Yeah.
But that gift of love, even in the words, that smallest act of kindness, I just think make the greatest impacts every day, no matter what you're going through.
I like that. Celeste, how do people stay in touch with you? Where do they find you?
CelesteEdmunds.com is my personal website. The Christmasbox.org is our business, our charity.
Okay.
And I'm on everything if you Google me. You can't get away with anything anymore.
Does that look right there on the screen?
CelesteEdmunds.com. That's me. Yes,
Perfect.
sir.
Yeah, we'll leave that up there.
And I can't wait to sign up for your 12 lessons.
Yeah, come do it. It's
I'm totally
it's
going to.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, just one story here. We had a participant that went through, and she came through on a scholarship. She couldn't afford to pay it, so we put her through on scholarship. As she was living in her car, and we set a goal. She had her vision of living a block from the beach, and that was her vision, that she would live in a really nice apartment home a block from the beach, but she was living in her car. So we moved her from living in her car, and she created all this. We didn't do this, she did it. But she went to a Motel 6, and then every day was fighting to keep that Motel 6. And then a job opened up, and that allowed her to get a place, and she moved into her beach home. She created her beach home. Yeah. And now she's so anchored in that now she's going back and serving others. And it's just one story of many that have been impacted by that. It's like your stories. It's like, I just want a shirt with a tag on it. And with the 12 journeys, that's what we want to see that hope again in people, that you really can change. It doesn't matter how old you are. So it's always there. So thank you. Ryan, do you have some thoughts? I know this is probably hitting home for you.
Yeah, I'm glad we started out the show the way that we did, and talking about your own personal struggles and things are just as they're your own personal Everest, and comparing to somebody else's, like, oh, I'm like, that's natural to do, but when you're in your own life and you're living it and you're going through stuff that's a challenge or seemingly hard, that's your own personal Everest. Sometimes it can feel like there's absolutely no way out. You feel stuck or abandoned or lost or fear. You can get hardened to the world, and I'm so grateful for the experiences that I've had, the experiences that you've had. And I wasn't always grateful for them. It took a while. it took a long while, and I had to wake up to the way that I was being in the world. And I don't know why it's like popular in your 30s to do instead of like earlier than that, but it was my late 30s for me. And uh, there's a moment of like, son of a gun.
Yeah.
We'll keep it PG. Son of a gun. Like, I could have done this different all along, but it took a little bit of maturity and a little bit of growth to then also realize,
Yeah.
but it's now, and now's all that matters anyway. I can't change the past. I can change now, which then impacts the future. And I'm so grateful for your experiences. I can't wait to read your book,
Thank you.
and all the things that you went through, because you're here now. You're doing amazing things now, today, and you've done amazing things that are impacting so many people. It's interesting as well, and at least to me, the thin threads that bind us all together. And with Rick Evans, Paul Cardall is a dear friend of mine,
Oh, yes.
and just all of the little connections that we've had throughout the last, I don't know, Nick, 5 6 years of knowing each other and working together, um, have just reaffirmed to me that, we're all a part of something bigger or greater, and that there are no accidents. If you're feeling small, if you're going through your own personal traumas, and some of them could be, you know, pretty big. They could feel pretty giant. Remember that you're a giant too. That there is hope. That there is a way through, and that many of us have experienced some pretty difficult stuff um, that we found a way through. And we're right here. We're not going anywhere. You do matter. You've always mattered. And I'm just grateful. There's a lot of gratitude in my heart for you, Celeste, for doing the things that you're doing, and continue to show up the way that you're doing, because you are a giant. You always have been a giant, and I'm grateful that you've uncovered that and discovered it for yourself. We love you, and we appreciate you being on our show.
Thank you. So grateful for you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For everybody watching, go grab this book. Like, don't hesitate. It'll hit you. This will hit you, and in a good way. The message is impactful and much needed. And so go grab that reader story. We didn't even touch on everything that's in here. I mean, we touched on the philosophies that helped guide you through. But man, that I am moved by what you've gone through and what you've created. Thank you so much for sharing, being willing to share.
Thank
For
you
everybody,
for all you do. It's
no,
so great. You guys share so many messages of love and hope, and everybody needs it. And even when you're somebody that promotes it, you still have the days you need it too from someone else.
Yeah.
And so I
100%.
just can't do enough. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. To each of you that are watching, we love you. Remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The symbol of the X is you are the X. You're where you're going, and you're also where you are. And so you're doing what you need to be doing. Keep stepping. We love you. Go make it a giant day, and we will see you in the next video.
Love you too.